And this was what I was just about to ask you, Quatrina. Why has the response been slow? Was it because the way the flood occurred this time was because of heavy rainfall, and probably no one expected that we're receiving so much rainfall that would submerge so many districts of the province of Sindh?
I think that's part of it, because we did not anticipate the magnitude of the floods. We did not expect that rain alone could do this kind of damage and cause this much devastation. Along with that, in all honesty, the media was completely fixated on domestic politics at that time, which was the row between Dr. Zulfikar Mirza and the MQM, and the media covered that extensively at the time that the flood waters were rising in Sindh.
You mentioned
we dropped the ball.
Yeah, you mentioned
the ball.
Right, you mentioned the politicians, Quatrina, and those constituencies, of course, that are submerged, whose people have suffered, belong to very prominent politicians from Sindh. Have you been able to speak to them? What's their response? What do the people say about their representatives?
Okay, in the past 2 days, I've had a chance to meet with Yusuf Talpur, who's a member of the National Assembly representing Umarkot, and today I briefly met with Munawar Talpur, who is, of course, a brother-in-law of President Asif Ali Zardari. He represents Mirpur Khas, and the two men are not related, I should point that out. And I spoke with both of them, and they both have, they do have a sense of urgency. They do have a sense of concern. But what is missing over here is coordination on the ground. For example, one can name heroes, one can name individual people. I did, of course, in my previous programs, point out the work that was being done by the Pakistan Marines. And today I must point out the work that is being done by the Sindh police in Umarkot. Surprisingly, we don't expect the police to be doing this. But there's one particular senior officer over here, Munir Khoro. He has been going out there and rescuing people on his own initiative. He has been providing food on his own initiative. What we need is the institutions to respond. It's wonderful to have the heroes, but we need the institutions to back them up.
All right, and remember, Quatrina, when recently Hurricane Irene hit the United States and major cities of there, the residents, for example, of North Carolina were asked by the authorities there to simply leave that place and go to safer places. Why haven't we seen that kind of thing in Pakistan ever occurring? The floods are always a surprise. People lose their lives, they lose their belongings.
That is the tragedy of the whole situation, isn't it? It took the Asian tsunami to wake people up to the need for having tsunami alerts, yet we in Pakistan have been absolutely casual, thinking that last year's floods happened and we're not going to have a super flood ever again. Well, Mother Nature has other plans. Climate change, a global reality. We need to face up to that now and need to put this in place. If the most ironic statement that I have heard from people is the fact that they feel that they are at the mercy of whatever blows them whichever way. They have no faith in the political institutions. They have no faith in anything other than hoping that somebody is going to come and help them. And at the same time, a lot of anger that people are not coming out there. When I say people, I mean the political representatives, the journalists. They just feel that nobody's coming to listen to them, to hear their stories. Everybody just wants to take me by the hand and lead me to the house and show me the damage. And I try to do that because part of the healing process is to be able to share your tragedy with somebody.
That's absolutely right.
That really needs to be done.
All right, and one thing is for sure, listening to all three of our guests, that the assessment of the problem has not been up to the mark, and the response also has been slow. But when we return from this break in a couple of minutes, we'll focus on how to prevent a second wave of deaths. Around 345 people have already died. But now the problem has occurred. There's no use crying over split milk, but how to tackle the problem, how to prevent further damage. That will be our focus when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Witness with Quatrina. I'm Vikas Rafiq, filling in for Quatrina, who's visiting the flood-related areas these days, and she is on the program with us, talking to us about what she is witnessing there in that disaster-struck area. And we also have Mr. Luigi Damiani from the FAO and Mr. Paulsson from the WFP Pakistan. Already 345 people have been killed because of the floods. Quatrina, I remember on your first day when you reached there, you had reported about 300 families who were stranded almost half a kilometer off the national highway in Tandobago, and you were probably the first one to have reached them and found out about their problems. So I'm curious, what's happening now to prevent another wave of death? Because you pointed out in the beginning about the cases of dengue that have reached much havoc here in Punjab, now having reached those flood-affected areas. Quatrina,
yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please continue if you heard my question.
Yes, I did hear your question. The answer to that is nothing is being done. And the outbreak of malaria is already started. I've seen that in Badin, I've seen that in Mirpur Khas, and now I'm seeing it here in Umarkot. Malaria is rampant, and the biggest problem right now is that the medicines that have been provided, according to Mr. Yusuf Talpur, who's an M&A from Umarkot, he says that the medicines were ineffective. And that's simply not acceptable at this point. We don't have the luxury of time. What we need now, and I'm told that the President has taken notice of this. Mr. Talpur told me that the President has immediately ordered a quick response on this. We need aerial spraying on these areas. I know we are talking thousands of acres of submerged land, but two priorities: drain the water and spray what's left. Otherwise, we're going to have many more deaths because of disease, gastroenteritis, malaria, and God forbid if we have a pandemic of dengue. I shudder to think of the consequences, but the problems can only worsen unless remedial action is taken fast.
Right, and you were saying you had some questions for our guests in Islamabad, right?
I do indeed. In fact, Mr. Damiani, my first question would be to you. One of the things that I've found here is that the crops, as we discussed one time earlier in another program, the crops have been destroyed. The sugarcane crop is gone. The chili crop is gone, as is the cotton crop. Now, cotton, of course, is a cash crop. The wheat season is coming up for sowing, and most of the areas that will be cultivated for wheat are still underwater. Is there any alternative? What do you think needs to be done?
Yes, you are right. The Rabi season is here for weeks. Maybe we have to be ready to plant, to prepare for planting. Much lands that are still underwater and they will not dry until the sowing time, then we have to think a substitution crop. Last year mainly was used the sunflower and canola. So okay. I think this will be the case this year as well, provided that the water will recede. Maybe in some small areas the water will stay longer, and then that areas will be completely lost for this crop, for this season.
Mr. Damiani, a follow-up corollary question to that. From some of the reports I've seen and some of the water that I've tasted, the water is salty, it's brackish. The river water last year, the river Indus, when it flooded, brought with it immense amounts of alluvial silt deposits. That's not probably going to happen this year. So do you think that the government needs to do anything to prepare the ground more than it had to do last year, because the nature of the flood is different?
Yeah, but you have to consider the dimension. We are talking in Sindh only, we are talking about 0.8 million hectares, which is a huge amount of land. So right. Thinking of amendments, and this is simply out of reality, because you would need an enormous quantity. And if it works. The problem of brackish water has been existing before floods. Don't forget, these are lowlands. These are lands of the near the delta, and there is always an equilibrium between fresh water and salty water. Of course, the quantity of salt now with this flood, like last year with floods, will increase, because once they dry the soil, the salt will come up. But depends how much. This depends on many factors, if there is any drainage or not, and so on. Right. But we will cope with the situation as soon as it shows. The long-term solution is somewhere else. Is drainage. Is a big engineering work on drainage, so you can have washing the soil when the rain season comes, and the water should go to the sea, not stand over there.
Right. And if I can put a question to Mr. Paulsson, Mr. Paulsson, of course, the other two imperatives that are needed over here, we are still in the middle of, from what I have witnessed, in the middle of rescue and relief, because there are still people who are stranded in different parts of Sindh. I'm told about the city of Naukot, which is in Mirpur Khas, which is where I hope to be tomorrow, where people are still marooned. They can't get away. So we're talking relief and rescue at the same time. When do you think you will be able to, at least the World Food Programme will be able to mobilize along with local help to reach these far-flung areas? Because Badin is close to Karachi. Everybody can get there. Umarkot, Mirpur Khas, Sanghar, these three districts are really far-flung. Do you think that it's going to be possible for the World Food Programme to reach these areas with tents and clean water?
Now, the World Food Programme will focus on immediate food assistance for those in immediate need. Now, so I can't refer to the water issue. However, yes, we are already operational in Mirpur Khas, and we have also mobilized boats that are starting to become operational as of today. Those boats will be used for search and rescue and have been used by medical teams today. But we will also, of course, bring food for those who are stranded. Now, will this happen today? Maybe not. Will it happen tomorrow? Hopefully.
Right,
it's, like I said, quite a logistical challenge.
Okay, and Mr. Paulsson, Mr. Paulsson, Save the Children has warned that the lives of 2 million people, over half of them children, are at severe risk from disease as devastating flooding continues in Sindh. And of course, I mentioned that because the challenge right now is to prevent more deaths from occurring because of disease and hunger as well. Just for our better understanding, how do agencies such as your work in countries like Pakistan in times of this disaster, are they very much dependent upon the capacity of the local disaster management authorities here?
I mean, we certainly work in coordination with both NDMA, PDMA and local government structure. But the way we implement is through partners, NGOs, local NGOs, and also international NGOs. That's how we deliver our food assistance.
Right.
But this should be a coordinated effort, and it's certainly, as you've already said, it's not a one-man show. It's not just the World Food Programme, it's the NGOs, it's the government, it's other institutions that all have to form part of this huge effort.
Right, so would you say that there's been a shortage of aid workers this time, and there's also a lack of coordination in the different aid agencies?
I wouldn't say that there is a lack of coordination between the aid agencies and within the United Nations. We started this, like I said earlier, we started our distributions on the 12th of September, and I think together with what we call the cluster systems, which operates both for food security that Luigi and I represent, but also for health, water and sanitation and shelter. These are coordinating structures that work with the government and other partners to ensure that we don't overlap and that we don't have gaps. Right. In our assistance.
Okay, and Quatrina, as you pointed out in the earlier part of our program, of course, we are grateful to the foreign aid agencies for helping Pakistan out in these times of need. But there was a statement that the PMLN chief, Nawaz Sharif, has made. He's in Karachi also these days, in Sindh, I believe, touring these areas. And he says that the Prime Minister should use the money from his discretionary fund and not look towards foreign aid. How do you look at this statement?
I look at it as a political statement with some validity. I won't negate the validity altogether. And the issue really is, Waqar, that if you look at numbers, okay, we have estimates ranging from 5.5 million people to 7 million. And today, earlier in your program, I heard you say somewhere close to 9 million people.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm looking at is 9 million people is really, in sheer numbers, not a lot of people. And one thing you have to look at is that 9 million is 90 lakh rupees, right?
Yeah.
Now, 90 lakh rupees is what somebody in Pakistan spends on buying a Land Cruiser. So excuse my anger, but I do not see why we cannot raise these kind of resources. 100,000 rupees per family in southern Sindh would transform the face of this society. It's not that hard to do. People can go out with the polling list. They can go from the absolutely local level, which is called a DEH, that's D-E-H, which comprises of 3 villages. The local headman of every village knows who lives where.